Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild's Woodwords podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Thomas. We've got a good show for you today. Joining us is one of my best friends at the Guild. He's been a president, a vice president, a training director, and is currently our safety director. Welcome to the show, Mike Jones.
Thanks,
Mike?
Kevin.
We'll get you started like we do everybody. How did you get your start in woodworking?
It probably started when I was 10 or 11. My grandfather was a card-carrying union carpenter and taught me a lot of things. He gave me insight into the various avenues that I could take in carpentry. But the real buttons were pushed in junior high shop by probably one of the best teachers I ever had. He was able to see that and draw those skills and talents out in me in junior high wood shop back in 1966.
Okay. Well, how did you become a member of the Guild?
I was thinking about that the other day when you sent me these questions. I was at a church gathering one Sunday afternoon, and a guy there at church that I knew had on a polo shirt with Kansas City Woodworkers Guild logo on it. And I was asking him about it. And George says, well, our next meeting, our monthly meeting's coming up this Wednesday. Why don't you just come with me? So I went with him to the meeting. We were meeting in the basement of Jacob's Well Community Church over at 42nd, Wyoming. And he got me roped in to help, and right off the bat, I sat at the welcome table and checked people in with him and helped, and never stopped going after that.
George Dixon is a former president who Mike's speaking of.
Yep. God rest his soul. George passed away here a couple of years ago. He was instrumental in bringing a lot of new faces into the Guild. He was a really good recruiter when it came to drawing people in.
He always had a front row seat at the meetings too.
He did.
You've become kind of a go-to guy for several special guilds for the Archdiocese of Kansas City. Anything you'd like to talk about there?
It happened kind of by happenstance. The first project I did for Christ the King down in Waldo, and they were wanting to have what they call an ostensorium built for their adoration chapel. And it's a structure that houses the monstrance, which holds in the Catholic Church the body of Christ, the Eucharistic host. And people will go into the adoration chapel and spend several hours alone in quiet contemplation and meditation. And I had somewhat of a design that I had gotten from a gentleman in South Carolina. Actually, he was in Savannah, Georgia at the time, James Langley, and he had designed it pretty roughly off of some stuff that he had seen in Rome. And he sent me those drawings, and I took those and drew them out into scale and a set of building plans and proceeded to build it. And did it here at the Guild over a period of a couple months. And it kind of mushroomed from there. I'm actually sitting on a commission right now from St. Robert Bellarmine out in Blue Springs. They want me to build one for their new adoration chapel. And I've done a number of candle stands. I did a Divine Mercy shrine at our parish in Gladstone, St. Andrews. Done quite a bit of stuff.
You also had a small part in the restoration of the Empire Theater in downtown Kansas City.
Yeah.
And I remember that being a interesting process. Can you tell us about that?
That was one of those projects where after I got into it and realized what I got myself into, I probably should have said no. But I believe I was president at the time. And I got a call from the guy who had been contracted to restore the balustrade, which was originally the old stairway that went up to the balconies for the old theater. That was an interesting exercise because that theater had sat vacant for probably 30, 35 years. I remember distinctly there was a tree probably with about that big of a caliper of a trunk growing out of the roof of the turret over the entrance. That was originally the Durwood Theater. The Durwood family bought that theater back in the 50s and split it down the middle and turned it into a dual screen theater. And the Durwood theater system became eventually AMC Theaters. So it was kind of cool that AMC bought this old theater and proceeded to restore it. They got some historic restoration monies to do that. And one of the few things in that theater that was actually original to the building was the balustrade. So this guy had been contracted to come in and restore all the ironwork on the balustrade, and he needed somebody to put the handrail back on it. And we fortunately had some remnants of the original balustrade handrail that they had managed to salvage in the demolition of the interior, and we had that to go by. So it was a real exercise in going in and understanding and studying the components of that handrail, and it was a real challenge to come up with ways to shape that, because we had to build the two volutes at the bottom, which they sometimes call the wreath, that sits on top of the main newel post at the foot of the stairs. And then as the stair rail went up, it made compound turns to go up to the next level, called compound gooseneck risers. And then when it terminated upstairs, it terminated into what's called an easement. And all of those were theoretically roughly 90-degree turns, but they weren't. I had to nest the handrail on top of the C-channel that was welded to mount all that too. And it was a real challenge because typical joinery methods just didn't seem to work out very well. And I do have to say, Kevin Brennan, a good friend of mine, I had contacted Kevin because he, at the time, owned Kansas City Windsor Tool Works. And he made a couple of old reproduction tools that seemed to be well suited to doing what we were going to do with shaping that handrail. So consequently, Kevin was so intrigued because growing up as a kid here in Kansas City, he went to a lot of movies and matinees at the old Main Street Theater. So it worked out perfectly because he wanted to jump in and help. And I was glad to have his help. He's a very accomplished woodworker. He now lives down in New Orleans. So we got that done, and surprisingly, we completed that entire job in about 30 days.
Wow. I remember you did a little program
Right.
at our monthly meeting.
Right.
That, so.
It was probably one of the more challenging things I've ever done. I'd never done an actual build of a balustrade, and doing the handrail alone, and of course the history behind it and the way those handrails were crafted back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, were generally done by European immigrants. And the families, depending upon whether they were from England or Ireland or Italy or France, had their own unique profiles. And no idea who the original family was that installed all this. So it was a real interesting exercise just in studying the history of how these stairways were crafted. It was all terrazzo stair treads. It was a fun project. Once I got into it and realized that things were kind of beating along at a good pace, we were able to knock it out inside of 30 days. That's the part that kind of blew me away.
Yeah. Well, you've also done some teaching in your time here at the Guild. What's your favorite part of that?
All of it. I have to say the teaching part goes hand in hand with our mission statement for the Guild, and that is to provide an educational outlet for the community to learn the craft of woodworking. So in the various classes that I've taught here, it's been really enjoyable to be able to pass along what I have learned and come to love to those who have never done it before and want to do it more than once.
You've held several positions on the Guild's leadership committee through the years. What would you say was your favorite?
All of them and none of them. Uh, One of the more disturbing aspects for me about being a member of the guild and being involved in leadership is we've all heard about the 90-10 rule. 90% of the 90% of the people let 10% of the people do all the work. Um, to me, it's a wonderful opportunity to get involved in leadership in the guild because we're helping keeping this going. Um, because it's an all volunteer organization, every person getting involved in leadership plays a role and makes a pretty major contribution to the ongoing success here. Um, we didn't start out in this 10,000 square foot shop. We started out in the basement of a church, and it actually started out way back when over in Sugar Creek.
Moose Lodge or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, so we've gone in 35, 40 years of existence to where we're at today in a 10,000 square foot commercial shop that's only dreamt about by some woodworking clubs and organizations, and it's been talked about and written about by some of the top names in the country in woodworking. So we're pretty blessed to have what we have here. So the good part for me in being involved is I've made a pretty strong contribution to where we're at today, just like you. I mean, we both come from having positions in leadership, and we can look around this and kind of say, hey, we were part of making this happen.
Do you have any words of encouragement for anybody who might be considering a leadership position?
Absolutely.
Now's your time to
Do it.
to mentor.
Do it. The worst thing of all is to have an attitude that, oh, I don't have time, or oh, somebody else could do it, or I don't have any leadership skills, or all the various things that people have a tendency to say to themselves to talk themselves out of pursuing a leadership role. I say go for it. If you have a love of woodworking, what better way to make a contribution to the craft than to get involved and do your part? Because what we do today, you and I, is going to contribute to what happens 10 years from now when we may not even be around to be part of it.
Really? All right, Mike, it's time for our final three questions. Three simple questions that may or may not have anything to do with woodworking. Are you ready? Pins or tails first?
Oh, I don't do it in any particular order. Depends upon what I'm making. If it's a carcass or if it's a drawer, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. I lay it out with a layout tool.
Okay. Bourbon or scotch?
Bourbon, hands down, bourbon.
Any particular favorite?
Oh gosh, yeah, too many to name.
Do you have a woodworking hero?
I probably have to say Dave Kratz. Here locally within our guild, I'd say Dave Kratz is my woodworking hero. I lovingly refer to David, and I think I talked about it in the President's Roundtable. He is the jig master.
Yeah.
That guy can make a jig to make a machine do many, many things beyond what its original intent is. But he's a wonderful teacher. He is a wonderful mentor. Dave is a wealth of knowledge, an absolute wealth of knowledge. And anytime you have an opportunity to interact with Dave or have an opportunity to learn something from Dave, I would encourage one to do it, because the guy is a walking, talking encyclopedia of woodworking skill.
All right, thank you, Mike, for being here today, and thank you all out there for being here. Hope you're wherever you're listening or watching from. Remember to do all the regular stuff, like, share, subscribe, and as always, till next time, work safe and get your sawdust on.
A special thank you to our guest today, to the Guild's Leadership Committee, and to all of our sponsors. For more information about the Guild, upcoming classes, and events, please visit our website kcwg.org. You can also find us on social media by searching for Kansas City Woodworkers Guild. And remember to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications.